Stories in Stone, Luna's Royal Guard. By T.D.R. Red Sand. Stories in Stone, Luna's Royal Guard. By T.D.R. Red Sand. Twilight checked under her bed again, darting over to look in the closet. She then went tearing around the house. She locked doors, closed and bolted windows, drawing the curtains closed after. She lit candles after blocking out the bright day outside and rechecked everything again. Every single time she had tried to study, someone or something interrupted. This time though she was ready. She sent Spike to help Pinkie Pie for the day, posted a big "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door and sealed everything. This time she was going to get to her studying early so she could actually get more done without any interruptions. Moving to the table, she prepped the spell and held it waiting. The noise from outside was the usual hum of ponies going about their daily business, and none of it was loud enough to make out more than a murmur. No Pinkie bursting in, no Rainbow Dash wanting to show her new tricks, no Cutie Mark Crusaders ransacking her library. It was quiet and perfect. She waited again, expecting something just from thinking that, and again nothing. Finally, exhaling deeply a breath she had not noticed she was holding, she cast the spell, fading into her work. Line of dashes. The 42nd Legion, Luna's Hoof. A group of battle-hardened ponies that could trace their company's history through every major battle all the way back to their formation in the Discordian War. The unit was under direct control of Princess Luna herself. They followed what the princess ordered and only what the princess ordered. The usual nobles and officers that mired much of the rest of the guard forces were all but absent from the structure of command in this unit. It was smaller than any other force, the Equestrian Guard, but it was also the most feared. The usual gold and blue of the guard armor was replaced with black and dark blue, Gothic sweeping and spiked plate. The protection was the same, but the armor's design seemed to change how normal ponies looked, making them seem much more demonic. The Legion was composed of only those ponies that had survived several combat situations. Entry into the unit required another 6 months of training that made basic seem like a birthday party for fools. Out of 30 to enter the training, it was not uncommon to only have 5 or less pass. Gerard's group had managed 7 to the instructor's amazement. Before he had been cleared for duty, he had received a note from Princess Luna herself, asking if he wished to join the unit. He had no real idea how to respond to that invitation, simply accepting immediately, as he really could not see himself saying no to anything either of the princesses asked. As soon as he was cleared by medical, he was thrown back into training. More running, more magic and weapons training, leadership training, and pain tolerance were only a few of the tests and exercises of the training. He had a little better time of it than a few others in the unit. Some were like him, were veterans who accepted the offer for the unit, others were new trainees who had scored well enough on their basic training to be considered for the program. None of the trainees made the final cut. Gerard himself only managed it due to one test with the live basilisk, which only 3 ponies passed. Placed in teams of 4, the trainees were released into a large enclosure to fight some beast that had been captured. One of his team met the creature's gaze, succumbing instantly to its power. Gerard had not even spared the stoned individual a glance before he was on the large lizard-like creature, shield slapped over its eyes and his blade stabbing rapidly into the thick scales. The other two team members quickly joined him after a moment's hesitation, the combined attacks ending the creature's life. A medical team came in restoring his fallen teammate to flesh, the others moving on, becoming the only team to pass the test. When asked about how he knew what to do so quickly, he responded with the tale of the cockatrice in basic, which garnered a bit of a surprised grunt from the trainer before they sent him back to running. It was later he found out what it was they were really looking for. The main thing that was needed before ponies were allowed into the 42nd. A willingness and ability to kill without hesitation. Ponies were not meant for war. Most could barely stand the thought of harming pest animals that attacked their crops, let alone be able to kill creatures that had the same level of intelligence as they did. Several land disputes in Equestria had been fought with pies rather than real weapons. Ponies were not predators. At times there were fights and the rare killing in anger or jealousy, but there was nothing in them that allowed killing unless their lives or loved ones were threatened. The 42nd wanted ponies who could put aside their morality to do terrible things, so that the rest of Equestria could sleep safely. Finally graduating the advanced training and being given a week of downtime before shipping out, Gerard found what had happened to Starfall. The Pegasus had been sent back to the Diamond Dog front after mastering the sonic rain boom. She then spent most of her time blasting across the countryside, shaking the bare foundations of the Bonehound encampments and most of the Diamond Dog territories as well. The dogs complained and threatened the pony ambassadors, demanding the sonic attacks cease. Finally, having a position of bargaining power over the dog, the ambassadors took full advantage of it. The ambassadors simply claimed the testing was done over equestrian lands, and they had no reason to cease until the Bonehounds were all defeated. The arguments barely lasted a week before the Diamond Dogs started agreeing with whatever was asked just to get the noise to stop. The remaining Bonehounds were rounded up and turned over to equestrian forces, many of them having simply given themselves up. Their will was broken by the death of their leader, and the constant sonic attacks snuffed any fight left in them. Reed was still somewhere. He had stopped sending letters so often, citing a few mares who were looking for him might start tracing the letters he sent. He told Gerard not to worry and he would send a letter again when he could. Typical Reed, to be honest, more likely using his free time to chase tail than write. Gerard himself was sent to the front of a new war where the 42nd had already dug in, the Zebra Plains. Far to the south of Equestria, across the desert far past Old Epliusa, lay the Zebra Lands. Most of the country was mostly scrub plains that only the hardiest of plant life managed to live. The seasonal rains turned the land into a lush paradise of green that changed the look of the whole country for several months at a time. Thick jungles surrounded the few rivers running through the land, runoff from the mountain range along the west coast. Most of the population lived near these rivers, clearing out large sections of forest for cropland or living off a diet of fish and whatever else could be found to eat. The Zebra Lands had long since lost any centralized government. Warlords of varying power had risen up through strength of arms or manipulation. Each sought to overthrow the others around them and seize the land for themselves. The dictators rose and fell, and the struggles continued, leaving the common zebras suffering. Eventually most of the warlords were destroyed or absorbed by one warlord's force. The warlord Zaltoric. Zaltoric's forces grew with each acquisition of land he gained from defeated foes. Soon he had the closest thing to a centralized government the Zebra Plains had seen in decades. Unfortunately, he abused this power, treating anyone his forces overthrew as little more than slaves to do his bidding or as his entertainment. Not wishing to stop the rampant growth of his lands either, he kept the peasants working the fields and mines, focusing his attention to some of the border towns of Equestria, seeking to take advantage of the multi-front fighting with the Diamond Dogs. The plan worked for a while, as the Equestrian Guard was not prepared for a war on two fronts so soon after the conflict with the Griffones of the North. However, the sudden appearance of the sonic rain boom collapsed the Diamond Dog front and left the Guard to focus all their attention on the warlord. The battles tended to be fierce and brutal, the warlord's forces utilizing strange chemical-based spells that devastated the forces to encounter them. It did not take long for counter-spells to be made available just in time for the weapons to change, and a new counter needed to be developed. The 42nd was deployed in the middle of this, spearheading the push deeper into the Zebra Plains. The quick strikes and ground rapidly gained by the 42nd pushed the warlord's forces back nearly to the jungle surrounding Zaltoric's capital city. For every mile gained, many lives were lost, the 42nd taking the majority of these losses, turning an already small unit into a skeleton of its former size. Luna halted the rush, opting to dig in and cut off supplies from the warlord. Barriers and trenches were set up in the lands surrounding the city and its thick forest. Siege had begun. The warlord's forces holed up in the thick jungle. Zaltoric was not finished, however, and his own forces dug in just as deep. Which brings us to now. Drag him back into the trench. Keep your heads down. Another spell explosion rocked the earth, flinging dirt and sand into the air, showering over the green shield half covering the trench Gerard walked along. The troops lifted up over the wall, rapidly grabbing the crying earth pony and dragging him back into the trench. A near hit had broken through his shield enough to fling some of the troops out from the protection. It had been enough to shield them from the worst effects of the spell bomb, but there were still injuries. He looked into the sky at one white cloud floating high above the battlefield and stepped aside as the injured pony was carried into his bunker. He could cover a large section of the trench with his shield, but direct hits or even near direct still broke through. The left side of his formation had been melted into goo along with most of the remaining command staff. The only pony still above him and ran in this bombardment did not seem to have any interest in doing anything but keeping his head down for now. He watched the earth pony be carried off. One of the other sergeants, Purple Candy, he believed was the stallion's name. Honestly, he rather liked it better when a pony changed their name a bit. When entering the 42nd, it made him feel less silly to call them by name. The stallion would likely lose the mangled stump that was left of his limb, but he would survive provided any of them made it to this. One such pony had taken his rank as his name and had issues being called anything else. So, Staff Sergeant, are we having fun yet? The graying commander lifted his head, a wide grin almost set to madness plastered across his face. The Major, what his real name was no pony, but he and Princess Luna likely knew, but everyone knew the Major. He had served in the 42nd longer than any other pony save the princess, having been there since the end of the Dragon War. He was a teal Pegasus with a coat streaked with gray and scars, including a very large one where his left wing had been before a griffin had ripped it off in the Northern War. He seemed content to be ground-bound, only occasionally making comments that made one think he would love to fly again. The Major had claimed to know Gerard's father and had taken him under his wing, so to speak, getting Gerard transferred under his squad's command. Gerard eventually proved to the older pony that not only could he hold his own, but had a head for leadership. The Major made Gerard his second in command, though the duties mostly would up making him a message carrier and preventing the Major from doing something insane. And of course saving his old flank when he decided to launch a daring midnight raid on a zebra outpost by himself because it might be fun. Of course the Major had taken down half of the outpost guards by the time Gerard led the rest of squad to his rescue, so perhaps, walnuts, he had the luck of the goddesses. The Major had on several other occasions proven he was crazier than anyone else as well. Charging through explosions, leaping off cliffs, and generally doing anything he could to make Gerard's job of keeping him alive a near impossible task. By Celestia's pearled horn, you are crazy, sir. What's your point, Sergeant? Got one on my head, but that's about it, sir. Any word from command? Gerard nodded to the comp box next to the Major, the older Pegasus pony simply shrugging. Same crap, seems the stripes are pulling this up and down the lines. Nothing new. How's the shield holding up? Seems to be keeping out the rain at least. I'm good for a few more hours, I think, mostly bored. It can't take anything heavier than the rain through. Bah, still glad for that. I'd be picking pebbles and dirt out of my mane for a month with all this stuff flying about. Spotter noticed anything yet? No, sir. Has still in the air, being kept up by the AA weapons. Gerard gestures up with a hoof to the lone cloud floating above the battlefield. A weather Pegasus spotter, his eyes on the battlefield below, ready to signal with lightning the moment anything was noticed. Most ponies had been trained to recognize lightning flash code. This method of communication was a rather recent idea, but had helped immensely with communication among forces, removing the reliance on the GEMCOM units. Better's doing well for himself, must be nice and cushy up on that cloud. Do know, sir, but, hang on. The faint rumble of thunder was all but drowned out by the explosions still hitting the ground around the bunker, though the flashes of light were easy to read. Forces incoming, zebra line advancing. Raising his shield a bit, Gerard poked his head up over the trench's edge, along with the Major taking note of the black and white forms charging from the tree lines. Ready the troops, Sergeant, we need to meet them just after they hit the fence line. Too many holes in it now thanks to that blasting, got to keep them out of the trenches, too many wounded in here right now. 42D on your hooves, we have incoming, prepare to meet the charge, keep them away from the bunker. Let's show them how much we enjoyed their fireworks, Sarge. 'Bout time. Was getting a bit bored sitting in this hole, Sarge. Really? but I just settled in for a nap with how peaceful it's been. Let's show these party crashers." Gerard smirked. Any length of time under the command of the Major and some of his insanity rubbed off. "On your word, sir?" The Major watched, dark eyes shifting over the charging group, his teeth grinding a bit on the stalk of weed he was chewing, eyes narrowing as they ran past the fence line closing on the trench line. "Now! Move, move, move!" A good 20-some ponies rose up over the embankment, including Gerard and the Major, charging forward across the crater-filled sands to meet the charge. 6 months into the war he had enough of a command of things that the Major all but let him run day to day in the squad. Granted, the Major's squad was only a small part of the 42nd, a scant 40 ponies out of a few hundred, but the Major called it a learning experience for him. Gerard had great respect for the Pegasus. He had yet to let a crippling injury nor age stop him from serving, usually from the front. They had been posted in a bunker not far from the edge of a large river. The main purpose of the post was to stop the zebras from using the river to ferry supplies. The last few days, however, they had been under constant bombardment. This was the first sign of an actual zebra that had been seen in the last 3 days. The line of ponies charged over the short span of scorched earth to meet the charging zebras. Weapons brandished, horns powering up and brought to bear against the raging stripped forces. The attacks were completely ineffective as the first blow dissolved the zebra to green mist, more blows revealing the same. "It's a trap. Press forward. Don't stop, get under the arc of fire." The high-pitched whistle perked his ears as Gerard kept rushing towards the tree line along with the Major. Explosions crashed down behind him, taking out a few of the ponies who had been shocked by the sudden illusions. Most of the others were used to the insanity displayed by their leader and rushed towards the woods, working to get under the arc of the falling spell bombs. Another force of zebras rose from the wood line just as the remaining pony forces reached it and plowed into the combat, blades and magic flaring. Gerard's sword drank deep of zebra blood, and the Major's hoof blades ended another's life. They pressed on harder, pulling away from the brunt of their troops. The pair broke into a clearing just as a large wooden machine launched another bomb. A slight nod was given to Gerard as the Major rushed the machine as it was reloading, leaving Gerard to charge the guards around the device. His magic flared, a panel forming, giving the Major a ramp to leap off of onto the zebras manning the device. The remaining troops caught up, laying into the guards. Things were going rather well. The unit had surprised the crap out of the zebras with their continued charge. However, such a rush does not last forever. One of the zebras managed to grab the Major by his remaining wing, flinging them both into the catapult just as it launched, flinging the old Pegasus, the zebra, and another bomb into the air. "Major." His eyes widened as he turned back to the guards left, noting one running over and slamming both hooves down on one of the bombs. His eyes widened as he threw his shield up, trying to cover as many of the remaining troops as he could. The force of the blast setting off the remaining bombs and vaporizing the machine and anything near it, flinging the rest back along with everything else in the clearing, making the stretch of empty jungle that much wider. Slamming into and through what felt like every tree in the jungle, he was sure he blacked out, though not for long it seemed. His ears rang, but he could hear the sounds of movement around him and a curse or two from someone in his troop. He managed to slowly push himself up to his hooves, his whole body in pain, one eye already swollen shut. He winces, letting a bit of magic trickle out, finding his grandfather's sword embedded in a tree nearby. Yanking it free and barely managing to sheath the blade before his energy faded. He shifted his gaze around, noting one or two of his unit were laying nearby, one groaning soft curses, the other at least breathing. Taking a sharp breath that sent another wave of pain along his chest, he smirked slightly at the flame-lapped clearing he was on the edge of. One less artillery piece for the zebras to use. Although the cost might have been a bit much in terms of lives. His eye narrowed, seeing movement coming out of the tree line, a zebra mare looking over the wreckage with a small shake of her head. She glances down, pushing something on the ground, a moment later pulling a unicorn from his unit out from under some debris. The pony seemed to be breathing still. Gerard gritted his teeth. Like hells he was going to let a soldier from his unit die like this while he could do something about it. He ignored the pain dashing over the debris-strewn clearing, intent on, if nothing else, goring the zebra with his horn. She looked up, watching him move closer, then suddenly wasn't there. He nearly fell, stopping hard in time to feel several light strikes hit the left side where he was blinded. He whips his head around as his body stops moving at his will and collapses in a heap at the hooves of the zebra. Admirable that the pony seeks to help his kin, but such a mess he left. Where can I begin? And the world went dark. He awoke to screaming, jerking upright. He was greeted by a great deal of pain, and then even more once he crashed to the ground after rolling off something. Resting on the ground a moment, the cries just above him to the left. He swears loudly as he opened his eyes. Well, one eye, the other seemed to be wrapped tightly closed. Raising his head, he took notice of the cot he had fallen off of. One of many in a rather large tent, most of them occupied. The screaming was coming from a pony next to him, whose whole left side was wrapped in cloth. The white linen dark with stained blood. Rising to his hooves and rapidly regretting the sudden movement, his monocular gaze took in the occupants of the other cots. He only recognized one or two of the ponies from the major's squad. Moving closer to the screaming pony, he visibly winced, looking down at the injured unicorn mare. She was not from his squad. Looking towards the foot of the cot, he caught sight of the remains of charred armor and a half-melted blade sitting in a basket there. He recognized the unit patch as another of the 42nd one from a squad that had gone missing prior to the bombardment. The squad was reported wiped out to a pony. Either something was wrong here or the reports were wrong. She had been through much pain, she is over the worst, all that is left is gain. Whirling around and promptly falling back to the floor, inhaling sharply only to have the pain seemingly double. He shook, coughing violently, a coppery taste splattering his lips. A brief glance down showed the splatters of blood on the floor. I gave a complex powder you drank with bib, but it is mending your broken ribs. He lifted his head, ears flattening as he looked up into the face of the zebra, speaking. She seemed the typical zebra, black and white, stripped with some obscure sort of symbol as a cutie mark. She wore no jewelry or rings like any other zebra he had seen. Her hair was also not up in the usual spikes or mohawk, but down and falling in waves over her head, pulled back from her amber-colored eyes by a strip of red cloth. The mare seemed to ignore him after her speech, moving around carrying a tray across her back with some steaming bowls. She shifted suddenly, the tray seeming to float a moment where she had stood before she whipped back, catching it in her mouth, setting it on the edge of the screaming mare's bed. So what, were all zebra prisoners now? Not a cell to be seen in sight. Why must you ponies always seek a fight? And what's with the rhyming? The pony language is absurd. The rhyming helps find the proper word. Gerard pondered that a moment before pushing himself back to his hooves a bit more carefully, this time watching the zebra pour the broth down the throat of the whimpering mare. The zebra did have a point, there were no cells here and he had to spare a second glance, but that was his armor and blade sitting in a basket at the foot of the cot. Who are you? She's the goddess blessed spectre, Sarge. He turned his hooves, shuffling as he tried to take slow movements to ease the pain. His eye locked on a pony raising a hoof from one of the beds, waving him over. Leaving the zebra to feed the unicorn, he hobbled over to the stallion on the bed, noting he was a member of the Major's squad. His injuries seemed somewhat minor compared to his own and the unicorn's. He scanned the room, noting many others covered in bandages or with blankets pulled over their heads. Looking down, he recognized the Earth pony, but the name was eluding him. Nice to see someone else survive that explosion, Corporal. Pie, Sergeant. Corporal Pie. Isn't your first name Bannon? Just Pie will do, Sergeant, if you don't mind. I think with the exception of the Major, everyone who went in survived the blast. She's already sent a few of them back out. Brought every pony here. Nice to see you finally woke up as well. You've been out about 3 days. Thought you might be as bad off as the lieutenant over there. Wait, 3 days? What in the name of Celestia's mane is going on, Pie? You said she was the specter. You mean that supposed ghost of the battlefield that's been reported? Yep, in the flesh as it were. Her name, as near as I can tell, is Felker, and there was a lot of zebra gibberish mixed in when she said it, and that's all I could pull out of the name. She's been grabbing anyone off whichever field she can. She brings the ones she can't patch on the spot here for healing. Whatever sort of crap she puts into that stuff she feeds us works wonders, even if it tastes like moldy hay. So what, you're simply sitting here being ministered by the enemy? She ain't the enemy, Sarge. She's not with us or the warlord. Seems to be the sole neutral party left in this area. She helps whoever needs it. Not every pony in this tent is a pony. Quite a few zebras in here too. Most of them are in no shape to start a fight, but I've seen one that did. Watched her barely touch the stripe, and he fell over out cold. He was turned out soon after. Guess she figured if he was healthy enough to fight he could go away. I find it hard to believe she's been doing this on her own. The reports of the battlefield specter have been going on since this began. And how many reports of missing ponies that have turned back up after vanishing from a battle. I remember there was quite a few AWOL reports till it was clear they had been injured and healed. That mare's become something of a legend for both sides. I know a few of her patients stick around a bit to help out. That's how we all got back here. Not a lick of this makes any sense. And yet here we are in a strange tent in the middle of the night being tended by a strange zebra, when by all rights we should be dead in a field somewhere. Not much of an off-the-wall sort of thinker, are you, Sarge? I prefer facts to guesses. Well then ask her directly like I did. Just don't try anything, Sarge. She'll likely kick your busted up flank from here to Cincinnati. Your best bet though is to head back to bed. It's late enough as it is. She's likely only even awake to tend the lieutenant. I would like more answers first before I am comfortable enough to sleep. Suit yourself. Gerard turns, using his magic to lift his sword from the basket to at least put it on a bit, blinking a moment as his horn flares weakly, the green glow barely forming around the sheathed weapon before fading out. He tries again with the same result. What the? A unicorn's magic is dangerous, this is true. It is muted a while with the help of my brew. What? The medicine she's been giving subdues a unicorn's magic power, I suppose. It's a good thing though. Can you imagine the damage the lieutenant there could do in her state if her powers were on? Pyromancy tends to be a bit destructive, I've heard. You're way too calm about all of this, Corporal. And a bit more knowledgeable than you should be. I was the intelligence liaison to the Major, Sarge. I know a lot of stuff and I hear a lot more. It's been a rough 3 days for you, pretending to be dead and all. Settle down before you hurt yourself more. You're already sweating from the effort. Besides, whatever she gave me for the pain has got me not feeling a bucking thing, Sarge. You should try to get some sleep. Ignoring this, Gerard moves over to the basket, hiding his wince, slinging the harness over his head, letting his sword hang loosely at his side, not feeling the urge to tighten it on over the bandages. Moving closer to the zebra mare as she finishes pouring the potion down the unicorn's throat. So what happened to her? Where's the rest of her squad? In Zaltoric's death spell she was caught. For her teammates I could do naught. The zebra watched him fiddle with the straps a bit more, shaking her head at the action. For 3 full days you utter not a peep. Now you waken when I want sleep. He narrowed his eye, watching her put the balls back on the tray, flipping the wooden server up and onto her back again. She trotted off to the edge of the tent, dropping them into a small pile of other dishes. She glanced back at Gerard, who had yet to do more than follow her with his gaze. I understand your bit of fright, but no harm will come to you this night. She kept her gaze level with his a moment before she finally sighed and ducked out of the curtain. Gerard pondered a bit, looking over the sleeping forms in the tent before glancing back to the panting unicorn. Out of the 25 cots he could see only 3 were empty, 8 held zebras and the rest held ponies. All of them were in varying stages of injury. Some snores here and there and others lifting their heads to look at him a moment. 1 or 2 offered slight waves to him before laying back out on their quads, others just turning over after judging he was likely not a threat. 2 of the zebras kept their eyes on him, however, until he gave in, moving back to try and lay a bit more comfortably on the cot. He barely managed to fold his legs up under him as he lay down. He doubted that this was as idealistic as it seemed, regardless of somehow living 3 days while asleep. If it was true he owed the mare his life, if it was some sort of a trap, well, best to be ready for that sort of thing. He had been through a great deal because of the zebras. He knew not all of them served the warlord. However, to have one go out of their way to help and save anyone they could seemed a bit too idealistic. This zebra either had some sort of ulterior motive, or she was likely the nicest creature on the planet. He woke with a start at the clang of dishes and the smell of some sort of cooking herbs filling the air. Gerard had not meant to doze off, but it had seemed inevitable he would after getting comfortable. At least he didn't hit the ground when he woke this time. Raising his head, he watched a few of the more immobile patients moving about, cleaning or checking on the ones that were not. Bedpans were changed as well as dressings and bed linens. There was little talking between the ponies and zebras, but they still managed to go about the tasks as if it was unspoken rule to get as much done as they could. He saw he was not the only one wearing a weapon, though most, it seemed, had opted not to. He slipped off the cot, seeing a few of the ponies approaching him. He didn't recognize their unit, though they offered a polite nod, evidently not much for talking, or it might have been more. They were not sure how to address him at this point in a non-combat situation. He was not sure himself, to be honest. He let the ponies go about their work, checking on the unicorn lieutenant again, seeing she was still asleep, and not showing signs of pain. He hobbled off, wandering over to where Corporal Pie had been, seeing the cot empty but neatly made. One of the zebras that had been watching him last night pointed him towards the flap the zebra mare had gone into the night before. Nodding a bit in a reflexive thanks, he caught himself a moment before he turned and shook his head, wondering if he was still drugged, as he could not bring himself to hold any ill will towards the stripes in the tent. He paused a moment, thinking about the Major's death, and felt the rage building. He stifled it, ruling out the drugged option, wondering if simply seeing them as something other than the enemy had something to do with the lack of urge to fight. Pushing the flap open and walking gingerly into the room beyond, he was somewhat surprised by the sight of a few more patients moving around a somewhat modern, if piecemeal, kitchen. Another set of flaps to the right were pulled open and lead out to a large fire pit with a large metal slab over the flames. Pots and pans bubbled and simmered over this large outdoor grill that looked as if it had been made by dragging stones from the surrounding area. The large metal surface seemed to have been part of a zebra anti-air catapult in its previous life. The enclosed portion of the tent held a pump sink stacked high with dishes and various hodgepodge cabinets of different make and build that seemed overflowing with various plants and herbs. Nothing he readily identified, but he was neither a cook or a doctor. A Pegasus and a zebra were working on the dishes as he passed, heading towards the outside. Once there, he noted a braided black tail whipping lightly as the zebra mare wandered among the pots. A few of the other patients milled around, helping her as she prepared the meals, mixing potions into certain things and just working on broth with the others. The patients did not bother with the pots and pans, working instead to keep the fire going, occasionally taking a breather as injuries got to be too much. "Morning, Sarge. Don't suppose you're here to help? I doubt with the shape you're in you would be up for chopping wood." He greeted the corporal with a blank stare, simply watching for a moment more before hobbling out and away from the cookpit, wandering along the side of the tent, looking over the area this place was in. The corporal shrugged, kicking another log on the fire. He glanced back before rounding the corner of the large tent, noting the zebra mare was watching him. Jungle, lots of jungle. That was all that seemed to be anywhere around this place. The tent itself seemed to be like the kitchen, a great many different types of canvas sewn haphazardly together to make the whole thing bigger. A few trees brushed over the tops of the tent, offering it cover from the air as well as shade. Granted, with the colors chosen, one would have to be close to know this tent was not jungle itself. Rounding the next corner to what he assumed was the front, he found he needed to take a small breather. While it felt good to be moving, his chest ached painfully from even that slight exertion. The front of the tent faced a small river. A wooden raft rested on the bank, pulled up enough to be out of the current. A few ponies and zebras sat on the bank holding what looked like fishing lines dipped into the water. Observing for a while, content to catch his breath, he watched one of the injured zebras pull a fish from the river, pulling it deftly off the hook and drop it into a basket. A wounded Pegasus caught something as well, but was nowhere near as skilled with his hooves to remove it as neatly as the zebra did. He moved forward again, stopping by the tent flap, looking up at the mass of symbols stitched into the front flaps. He recognized only one of the 24 symbols on the flap, the Red Cross of the Equestrian Medical Services. One of them, he was sure, was the same mark as was on the zebra mare's flank. However, he managed another few steps before his body decided that was enough for now. Shifting a bit to sink down in a rather cozy-looking patch of scrub grass, he winced at a loud cry from above him. Glancing up, he caught sight of a rather large black bird of some kind, either a crow or a raven. He really had no clue which might live around here. His gaze dropped at the tramp of fast-moving hooves. The zebra mare rounded the corner, her gaze looking up to the bird, then back down to him, her approach slowing. "So you have a bird watching me? Not afraid you would run away, more afraid in bed you would stay. I've had worse. I do not think that an ideal boast. You look much like a cat scratching post. Hey? So what is this place? Why bring all these folks here, and better still, how are you keeping them from trying to kill each other?" Once again, to my chagrin, so many questions, where to begin? All of this is what you see, hidden deep within the trees. To aid the others is my goal, to do otherwise would stain my soul. Peace is easy without price, just remove the ones who won't play nice. He mulled over that a little, working on deciphering it. "So what, do you have this little talk with everyone who comes here? Or just the ones you knock out? You did not haul to save your skin, even injured you rushed to kin. They are part of my squad under the majors. Well under my command now, I suppose. I had no intent to let them be captured. 4 broken ribs, a wounded eye, were you not afraid to die?" "No, more afraid someone else would die if I did not do something. Do or die, triumph or bust, is there a reason for such trust?" Here I was supposed to be asking the questions. Besides, I am not sure if you're asking me to trust you or why I serve. So I'll just answer the first. Whatever it is you're putting in my food to cut out my magic, stop it. For right now I can only go by what I see and what's going on. Quite a lot of this is suspect to me still. If you are what it seems, then it's a Celestia blessed miracle. Though it's my job to expect the worst first and go up from there as more information presents itself. No violence from you I will expect, if your magic I do not affect. I promise I won't instigate anything, but I will also promise that I will defend equestrian troops if someone else does. I suppose that will have to do, at least it seems your words ring true. I will not use that special brew, though I must go now, too much to do. Right, I plan to sit here a while, if you need anything else. Now that I know you are not hostile, you should relax, you will be here a while. He closed his eye a bit with a sigh, sinking down a bit, trying to get comfortable in the warmer grass and the sunlight slipping through the canopy above. This was his 4th day here. Did everyone think him dead like the Major? Would anyone really be torn up by it aside from Starfall and Reet? Would they even hear about it any time soon? In his condition there was little he could do about it, even if he believed the zebra, which at this point there was no reason not to, just as there was not any reason to do so either. The Spectre of Life. Interesting title placed on the mare. How much of what was said about her was true? She did not seem to have so much as a mark on her, yet there were several reports of her being in the middle of an explosion or spell blast, only to be seen later dragging some other soul away. She was quick, but he didn't see how she would be quick enough to not get killed in the middle of a war zone pulling someone else out. Forget the Major's luck. This zebra was likely thrice blessed by both goddesses to have lived this long. Several weeks passed, and true to her word, Gerard's magic slowly returned. He was managing to get around better and had not coughed up blood again since that first day. The unicorn mare was looking a bit better as well, sleeping easier at least, and not waking up screaming every night in pain. Gerard had taken to administering the unicorn's medicine himself when she did wake up at night, letting the zebra sleep. Occasionally Velkern would take the raft upriver along with a few of the less injured patients. Sometimes she would return with supplies or more wounded. More often than not, some of the ponies that went with her did not come back. Eventually he was well enough to tag along on one of the trips. The river connected to a larger river that likely was the one that ran alongside of where he had been stationed. Stopping on one bank, he heard the sounds of zebra voices shouting and yelling in the distance. He watched as she blew a handful of powder into a pair of zebras' faces, leaving them stunned for a moment on the bank as she climbed back aboard and pushed off the raft, drifting down river and out of sight. What was that about? Not anything they will regret. My tent's location they will forget. That explains why no one remembers where they were. The rest of the trip was spent gathering herbs, and mostly in silence. The other zebra still limped along carrying what he could while the mare gathered. The silence was rather uncomfortable. "Pi told me your name was Velkern?" An apt translation it would seem. The full of it is Windtalker Stream. That's what Velkern means. She offered a nod, stuffing another few herbs into the saddlebag he carried, as well as some strange-looking berries and fruit, before sighing and heading back towards the raft with the zebra and Gerard following. It was the following day that things got rather interesting. The first of which was a visit by a squad of zebras in full armor and weapon loadout. They came marching out of the jungle, spotting the tent and pushing their way inside. Velkern moved up to intercept them, and a rather loud shouting match began that Gerard worked to follow from his cot, but he gave up easily, watching the zebra's body language and not liking how it looked. "What is this? You dare harbor the enemy in the lands of your lord?" "He is not my lord, and these are patients, not the enemy. You will do well to leave them in peace," Gerard sighed, ignoring the gibberish, watching as the 6 zebras fanned out a bit in the room, one meeting Gerard's gaze and sneering at the one-eyed bandage-covered stallion. Gerard returned the grin, his body hiding his blade laying on the cot next to him from the zebra's gaze. "I do not know who you think you are, Mare, but you will not stand in the way here." You will be brought before the warlord and hung for treason. The rest of this rabble dies here. Kill them all." Well, that did not take long. He held his ground a moment longer as the main guard lashed a hoof out at Velkern, a blow she easily dodged and returned, the resounding crunch of bones snapping as the guard captain's leg bent backwards at an angle that was painful to even look at. This was rapidly followed by his scream and the sneering guard moving to bring an axe down on the unconscious unicorn mare. Gerard's shield flashed into being, deflecting the axe easily enough, his teeth clenching on his sword's grip, swinging it about as he leaps off his cot, knocking the axe from the zebra's mouth. Another bone-crunching noise sounded from his right as the captain's other front leg was snapped as well. One of the zebra patients had managed to slam a cooking pot across the back of the head of one of the other guards, taking him down. Blocking a blow from the zebra's hoof with his shield, Gerard dropped the shield, swinging his sword to push the zebra back away from the unicorn, his magic bringing the zebra's own axe up suddenly into his side. The blade did not hit hard enough to kill, but the soldier went down screaming like he had been gelded. Gerard moved between the fallen zebra and the unicorn, his attention turning to the last three. Velkern had taken down another guard and was working on a second. The final guard moved, flanking her, whipping his spear at her back. She dropped the second one, glancing back and flinching as the spear stabbed at her, slamming hard against a glowing panel of green energy. She recovered quickly enough, striking her attacker easily 4 times before he could recover from the shock of his weapon being stopped. Her gaze swept the room, as did Gerard's, noting the small unit was all down, though 2 were crying and screaming in pain on the floor. They were all still alive. Walking past the one he had dropped, Gerard offered it a swift hoof to the jaw, silencing him while Velkern tapped a spot on the other's neck, knocking him out. "We're 1 for 1 last time I checked. I thank you, pony, for saving my neck." "Not a problem. So what do we do with them?" "They only came to cause me grief. They're patients now, in need of relief." "They attacked you and you're going to help them? That is a great deal more mercy than they were going to show you." She moved over to the panting zebra, who had swung the pot, opening his own wounds in the process, and laid him down to tend first. "This is a task you might find hard. Do not kill them, just stand guard. You're far nicer than you should be, but as you wish." "That's a lot of noise you ponies are making." "Mind keeping it down? My head hurts." Turning back around, he looked down to see the half-open eye of the unicorn mare, a small smirk on her heavily bandaged face. "Terribly sorry about that, sir. Had a little battle above you and all. Nice to see you back among the living." "Report." "Solidar. What's your rank?" "Staff Sergeant Kaser, sir." "The Major's squad?" "You have been out a while." He stood watching the fallen zebras, telling the unicorn the goings-on. Much had Pi done when Gerard had first awoke. While Pi had returned to the unit, having recovered and made to forget, there were a few more of his troops and an assortment of others nearing recovery. Gerard himself was likely to be sent back in a week or so more. Pulling the weapons and armor from the unconscious or wounded zebra unit, he floated them up to some of the cots after they were stripped down, Velkern moving to tend them as well. "I find that a total load of manure, Sergeant." "I said the same, only with less grace, sir. But all of it is true to the best of what I have observed. Even so, I need to report back we found a hole." "A hole, sir?" Sergeant, if was in any more control of this situation I would not be telling you a damn thing, but if I have been out as long as you say, we might be out of time. And I am not even remotely sure you are even who you say you are. What you want me to recite the guard's oath? Maybe swear on Princess Luna's cutie mark? That's enough, Sergeant. For the moment I will accept who you are. Even if you are the enemy, you likely know this information anyway. If you got any of my ponies to talk. Far as I know, sir, you are the only one left. Your unit was considered destroyed. Was a bit surprised to find you here. Damn, fine, listen and listen good. There's a cave at the southern base of the plateau the warlord's keep is on. It leads to some old crypts that run right up into the dungeon of that fortress. My squad was caught on the way to it, but the scribes might not have found out about it by now. It's our way in. We have a pony inside who left us a map and supplies in the catacombs by what he called the Tomb of the Dirty King. He claimed to have a plan in place, which would get us close enough to the warlord to take him down. That was weeks ago. It might all be washed by now. Not the best plan, sir, but if it's still there we could get back and inform the rest of the 42nd to act. Do you think your doctor would even let you do that? Likely not. So that leaves the other option as to go in ourselves. Sergeant, I feel like I am dead just laying here. I am in no shape to walk, much less fight. There's more than a few of us here, Sarge, who are up for a bit of ultra-violence. The unicorn turned her head, looking at the assorted wounded who had come in from tending the small field of crops, feeling rather upset for missing the fight. Only 12 of them, though they all seemed intent and most were about ready to leave the medical unit. A filthy lot of farmer ponies, yes, some good at will be. A dirty dozen of them, true sir, but all of them are guards, sir, not farmers. And nearly all of them are healthy enough now to be back in combat. No, I forbid this strife. I did not cure you so you can waste your life, Lieutenant. This is Velkern, the Spectre of Life. Velkern the Lieutenant, charmed I am sure. You just barely now are fit to wake, yet more lives you wish to take? Listen, Stripey, I have a mission, and I will be damned if I let you. The mayor coughs, wincing and trembling hard as Gerard glances over at Velkern. The lieutenant does have a point, Velkern. We have to do this. It's our one shot to end this war without making this siege go even longer and more ponies and zebras suffering. It's a long shot that the hole hasn't been plugged yet, but might as well try. This loss of life I cannot condone, but you seek the warlord in his home. Gerard smirks, doing his best, a major impersonation. If it wasn't dangerous it wouldn't be fun. It is clear you are insane. What has happened in your brain? Look, it's simple. We go and kill the warlord and the war ends. No more conflict, no more people suffering because of it. It all ends with him. Even if the 12 of us are killed, if we manage to take him down, it's worth it. Princess Luna will put someone in charge to set everything right. Your leader is the Mayor of Night. What makes you think she will not press the fight? No answer to that. But it's the warlord that's spurring the forces against Equestria. That's more than enough reason to end him. I see now what you try to do. If that's the answer, then I am coming too. Wait, what? No, I'm not having any scribes on my damn team. Stuff it, Lieutenant. Your part in this op is done. I'm taking over. That's insubordination, sir. I will have your hide for this. Welcome to it. If we fail we'll be dead and I won't rightly care. If we succeed we'll be heroes and you still couldn't touch us. Falcon's capable enough in a fight. Since most of us are injured anyway, a medic would not be turned away. Besides, if the slot found her tent then likely others will too, and they might not be so civil to come and talk first before attacking. I suppose you have your own reason for tagging along though, Falcon? You seek to end the war it seems. Could one not hope for better dreams? If you are correct at all these things, I will look forward to what this brings. Fine, we could use your skills, but first get this patch off my eye. It itches like crazy, and it's got to be healed by now. You're all mad. Especially you, Sergeant. No, oddly I am feeling rather chipper for once. Not angry at all. Definitely from the Major's squad. The lieutenant was a stubborn mare, but eventually she gave in and outlined the main plan to the exact location of the cave. The team took a few days to get ready. Falcon setting a few of the less wounded who were not coming to tend those that were while she was away before gathering various herbs and powders. Gerard took the day getting used to having depth perception again. The herbs and mix given to heal the burn to his eye left the formerly green-tinted orb a bright red. His vision was not hampered however, and it seemed the color was all that changed. Taking the time to repair his armor as best he could, the group of 13 slept for most of the day after their preparation, setting off as Celestia's sun dipped into the west. The small force followed the lieutenant's map to what seemed little more than a large crack like many of the others in a section of the towering cliff that lead up to the plateau. One trail on the north face led up to the top and was heavily guarded. The plateau itself was topped by a castle surrounded by anti-air weapons and catapults. Finding the cave itself meant slipping past a single patrol. It seemed the lieutenant's unit had not been close enough to alert the zebras to the cave. Slipping into the tight crevice, the small force trekked deeper away from the entrance before the other two unicorns lit up their horns, illuminating the way ahead. After an hour of trekking through the stony cavern and wondering several times if the lieutenant's information was correct, they found the first zebra sarcophagus. Falcon muttered something that sounded like a prayer as they passed. Beyond that first they found more and more coffins and bones, walls stuffed with skulls and macabre displays. Bones littered the ground and small unkempt piles. Stalagmites spun up into the darkness above, decorated with zebra skulls. Shelves were carved into the rock face. Sightless molded eye sockets stared back at them from every shadow as they progressed. Sarge, this is damn creepy. Cut the chatter. Keep an ear open for any other voices. We should be getting close to the dungeon entrance. The scout trail between the bones finally led up to a half-destroyed door covered in dust and mold. The ancient wood and iron entrance was slightly open. Drag marks on the floor showed it had been used recently. He waved a hoof, fanning the group up to check the sarcophagi in the area for their contact supply cache. A soft muttering of Sarge brought him over to one of the stone monuments. What is it? Some ponies got an interesting idea of marking where the gear is. Looking closer at the symbols on the side of stone, it seemed to be an image of a stallion standing on a pile of bodies with several well-drawn and very shapely mares clinging to his legs, or draped over his back and rubbing against his. Well, dirty king indeed. Right, this has to be it. His horn glowed a bit, the stone top sliding open, lightly thumping to the earth on the far side before he peered inside along with the earth mare who found it. "Not much in here, Sarge. A scroll and a set of keys as well as a collection of 8 potions marked on pony as invisibility spells." He gestured to a few of the ponies and the 2 unicorns. "It's enough and more than I expected. You 2 secure this area and make sure we have a way out. You 3 follow us up a bit, but don't leave the dungeon and stay hidden. We might be on our way out quick, fast and in a hurry. The rest of you take a potion." "Got it, Sarge." He floats the scroll up, looking over the map, taking note of the marks on the sides of them with interest. "Our source knows his stuff. Guard patrols and a beeline right for the warlord's chamber. Potions only last 30, you attack something or some pony touches you, spell's gone. Stow it and don't drink it till I say. Velker, you all right? This place is full of so much dead, never a body, just the head. We'll be out of here soon. You can stay with the rear guard if you want." She shook her head, ending that idea. She did seem distracted, and Gerard hoped it was only from the crypt. If she turned on them, it would be a much harder situation. He hoped the trust he had placed on her was justified. The group crept up into the next area, an old cell that the door had fallen off of, used now more for storage. Slipping out, he pointed Velker into the 1 guard half asleep standing by the cells. She nodded, darting over, striking the zebra on the neck, making the nap last a lot longer. Moving along the cells, shushing the occupants, a few tortured ponies and a couple of zebras as well. "You have 5 to 10, the worst of them, Velker, and you 3 send them back into the catacombs. Make sure they stay quiet. Put Sleeping Beauty here in a cell and leave him." He waited while Velker and some of the others moved about, checking on the prisoners, sending a few of the less injured ones back down the tunnel, aiding the ones who could barely move themselves. Velker bandaged and treated what she could, though for some of the tortured ones she could not do anything here. And for a few in the cell there was naught to do but offer last rites. "Room's clean, Sarge. We need to move before the guard changes." They moved up the stone steps, the squad's lone Pegasus poking his head out of the top of the door, looking about before waving the rest forward. "Drink it now, and stay quiet." Slipping along the wall, as passing guards and servants, they made their way deeper into the fortress without mishap. Of course, such luck never lasts forever. Duking around the corner before the map showed one hall in the warlord's chambers, one of the soldiers ran headlong into a couple of guards, immediately fading into view. The zebra's eyes widened at the sight of the unicorn appearing out of thin air, one shouting in alarm before the rest of the team managed to silence them forever. "No good, 3 in the open. Use the spell how you can. Going loud, ponies. If it gets in our way and isn't us, end it. Move, move." The troop broke into a run, tearing down the hallway, crashing into and through any force that got in their way. Velker ran alongside Gerard, both of them remaining invisible as they came about the last corner to the warlord's room. The guards had already swarmed the entranceway, blocking progress, though the ponies did not even slow down, smashing into their foes, blades and spells flying. Gerard darted around the fighting, becoming visible as he broke open the door. Velker sliding in next to him, slamming the door shut behind, having taken out a few of the zebras running past, leaving the unconscious form slumped on the ground. "What in the name of Luna's twitching ears?" The room was extravagant, rich silk drapes, paintings, statues encrusted with gemstones, objects of art and well-made weapons of war. The large room was like a museum. Grisly trophies of the heads of ponies and other creatures ran along the walls on either side of the room, all leading to the far end with a golden throne and what looked to be a bedroom beyond. The throne held his attention more than anything else, or more precisely the zebra corpse pinned to the throne with a spear, and the large zebra stallion standing next to the throne looking down at the corpse. Gerard clamped his teeth tighter on his blade horn, glowing ready to raise shields. Velkern stood back as Gerard advanced, her eyes locked on the corpse with a small shudder and a muted whimper. It should not have ended like this, brother. "'Bout time you ponies got here. Almost lost my cover on this one. I figured that shapely unicorn mare had survived. Gave her a bit longer than I should have, really. Ah well, better late than never." The stallion turns, spitting out a small gem onto the floor before stomping his hoof down on it hard. The gem shatters, and soon after explosions rock the outside of the building, going off in rapid succession. Whoops, that might have been a bit much. Now. Anyway, so who did they manage to send? Wait a tick. Jer? Is that you, Jer? What the heck are you doing here? Your unit was supposed to be guarding the river. Haha. This is rich. What are you talking about? Are you the contact? Well, yeah, but hold on, this thing's itchy anyway. The stallion lifts his hoof teeth, gripping a small gold band around it, yanking his head back, tearing the metal free. The zebra coloration flickers, fading out, showing a solid red flank with a brace of heart-shaped arrows on his flank. Reet? In the flesh? And who is this pretty little thing you brought with you? Tisk tisk, you're going native. Not the thing to do in a war zone. Of course I managed a bit of time for it, but then again it is me and I was a zebra for a little while there. Oh, what did you do to upset her? Oh, I see, it's you. Thought you might be back eventually. Bad luck it had to be now. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it had to end this way, but you know he would not have come quietly. I am unfortunately aware of that fact. What did you say? What are you doing here? What's going on? Nothing seems as it appears. More coming, use your ears. Yes, well, Celestia willing, the signal was seen and the main force is going to be hitting this place like a rotten nipple off our old school teacher's flank. Oh yes, need to borrow that sword of yours a moment, Jer. Trotting over, he kicks Gerard's blade up off the floor, where it fell from his opened jaw when Reach showed himself. Catching it in his mouth and all but prancing back, Reach swung the blade quickly, beheading the corpse of the warlord in a deft swing before flinging the bloodied blade over his shoulder at Gerard, who catches it reflexively with his magic. Now just remember, though I know how tempting it is, your lips closing on that sword handle now will not count as an indirect kiss unless your mere friend there wants to hold it, then it might. Don't tempt me to burn the handle bit. Read now what the hay is going on and why are you here? Need to know information. Ooh, that zebra with you does have a cute blush. Anyway, here they come, catch Jer. Reed seemed to be paying more attention to Velkern than Gerard, though he yanked the spear from the body, tucking it away. Reed smirks wider, punting the head of the warlord at Gerard, who again caught it reflexively with his magic, just as the door burst open. About this time everything went a bit crazier than it was already. The ponies that came with him were falling back, pressed forward by massed zebra forces. The lot of them suddenly stopped, seeing Gerard standing there with the head of their leader and a blood-dripping sword. Before they could do anything else, the wall behind Reed exploded inward. The dust barely settled when a swarm of Pegasus flew into the hole, dropping off Earth ponies and unicorns, who immediately moved into position in front of Gerard, working to surround the frozen zebra forces. The zebras started to move to engage with the crackling bolt of black and purple energy blasted apart the golden throne. A dark form floated into the hole, eyes glowing white as energy flickered along her life form, highlighting the crescent-shaped moon adorning her flank. More explosions sounded from outside, illuminated her form in a fiery glow. Surrender now or be destroyed utterly. The amassed guards shifted their gaze between the leader's head and the goddess of war floating behind the now broken throne, and nearly as one screamed, dropping their weapons and fled back out the door. We said surrender, foals, not flee like chickens. Round them up, kill any who still resist. Valkyrie had dropped to the ground, hiding under her hooves from the fury of the goddess of night. Reed simply remained looking amused, even as one of Gerard's ears drooped along with his jaw again. Well, look at this, my little pupil survived just fine. Figured that little explosion would have taken care of you for sure. Wait, Major? The one-winged Pegasus trots up, a stalk of wheat clamped in his mouth as he chuckles. The rest of the troops flooding through the keep, Pegasus forces ferrying in more. With each pass, evidently the explosions Reed set off were the anti-air weapons. What, did y'all think I was dead? Takes more than a fall from the sky fighting a zebra on the back of a bomb to take me out. Glad you made it out alive. So what happened to y'all? You get bored and decide to win the war on your own? Perfect. Knew you were the pony for the job. Squatters, now I'm retiring after this nonsense. Me and Azalea Petal are tired of this war crap. Been pooling our resources, got a nice split level of cloud love nest for just the two of us. And that Pegasus is buff enough he can fly me around without any problems. Anyway, you're the major now, pony. Enjoy being a war hero. I need to go get me a few stabs in before retirement. Huh? What? So we meet again, Sergeant. Well, I suppose IT is Major Caser now. A bit of a rank jump, but here you are in the thick of things, again killing the cause of the war with your own hoof, and savvying one of our more valued, well, Equestria's more valued, ambassadors as well. We shall talk again, but there is much to do. We are curious as to what this zebra is doing with you, but if you vouch for her, then we shall accept. Wait, who? The princess heads out the door along with the rest of the troops and the ones who accompanied Gerard in the attack. Reed helps Valkyrie up, putting on a great deal of charm and embarrassing the mare further, leaving Gerard alone with the severed head of the warlord standing in a blasted trophy room. What the hey just happened? Line of dashes. Twilight closed her eyes, lifting a hoof to rub her head a bit. That had taken longer than she expected it to. While it was nice to see the spell-translated zebra, she was more confused than ever now. What had happened? Why was Reed there and on some sort of terms with Princess Luna? Was Valkyrie the warlord's sister, or was it some other terminology? Why was the princess always so loud? So much stuff to write down. So little time. Her ears perked hearing a scream of some kind from behind her. Whipping around, she came face to face with Pinkie Pie and offered a scream of her own. "He is Twilight. Are you done because you're done, or did we bother you? Pinkie, what are you doing here?" "Oh well, Spike and I went and visited Canterlot today making a delivery for Mrs. Cake, and I found a new game for my play system, and Spike said you had been waiting for it to come out as well. Why are you here though?" "Oh well, Spike knew you wanted to see it, so I came over, but has been playing the game for a bit now. I think he likes it." "Wait. What game?" Twilight peers over Pinkie Pie to the magic screen where the scream had come from. There was a little dragon on screen looking up at a very large human that was spitting fire. "Is that?" "Yeah, this one's really neat. You can play a pony, or a dragon, or a diamond dog, or a griffin, and you're like the last hero who can deal with the menace of all these humans that came in stomping about. The game's by the same people that made the ancient parchment void game you liked. I didn't think that had come out yet." "Oh." Twilight glances back at the sword, then to the game as Spike yells at it and swings a spear what looked like a giant human in a suit and tie. "Crap, there goes my free time for a while."